Welcome to Tusks Tales, a place where every hunt becomes a story worth telling. From the first track on the ground to the last echo of a hound's voice, every moment holds meaning. Together, we'll explore the hunts that formed us, the dogs that inspire us, and the stories that keep our community strong. These are the tales that keep the fire burning. Hello, y'all. Welcome to the second episode of Tusks and Tales. Today, I am absolutely honored. When y'all sit here and you think of someone you really want to talk with and sit down and talk to, whether it's your favorite NFL player, favorite basketball player, soccer player, whatever, this is the man I've always wanted to sit down and talk to. I've talked to him a few times in the past as well. He's very informative. It's not going to surprise y'all. You know the type of dogs I run and who they come from. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and allow Mr. Mike Cauley to introduce himself. How are you, Mr. Mike?
I'm doing fine, thank you, Alan.
Yes, sir. So I talked to you, a little bit yesterday. We talked. You're currently having a hip replacement, is what you're sitting out on right now. You're not really able to run some dogs at this time.
Right. Exactly a month ago, I had a hip replacement, and as soon as I get well enough, I'm having a knee surgery. And originally, I was supposed to just have the knee surgery. I wanted to get it done during deer season because I'm not hog hunting then. And but then my hip threw a monkey wrench into those plans, and it kind of gave out. I had to go get a knee injection. Doctor x-rayed the hip, said your hips are wore out. So I've got to have a I did have the hip replacement.
So, but you did tell me you're going to be good to go by the main hog season down where the area-ish we're at, which is February, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, Mr. Mike, if you don't mind, of course, you've been on lots of platforms. Multiple people know who you are. I'm sure the majority of listeners are going to know who you are. Could you please just, reiterate who you are, what kind of dogs you run? Just start talking about that a little bit, and whatever you feel free to add in there, go ahead, wherever you'd like with it.
Okay, yeah. I started as a kid. I don't remember a time I didn't have a dog I was following around. I had a Cauley dog that used to run rabbits down, and boy, that was my favorite thing, taking to the ballpark where those rabbits came out at night and let him run them down. And then after that, I had a cur dog that would tree squirrels. And so, when I was probably 15, I think I mentioned this to you, I got into retrievers, labs. We did a lot of duck hunting. And, but I pretty much have run the gauntlet on dogs. I've had deer dogs, coon dogs, and now the hog dogs have stuck the longest.
Yes, sir. And, can you, just let them know, for the people that may not know you, we got a lot of newcomers that have been reaching out to me regarding questions like this. They're obsessed with the ones that are talking to me are wanting a bunch of information regarding the Plotts, because I do talk about them quite often. And a lot of my knowledge is based off of listening to you. So do you mind explaining to them, that your primary dog that you run right now is a Plott hound? Explaining that just a little bit, if you don't mind.
Right. And to start a little bit before that, I started with cur dogs, and I was very fortunate. I got good cur dogs. They could trail, they cast. They were all-day dogs. But I'd say in the early 80s, I got into Plott hounds because we were bear hunting over in Florida when Florida had a season.
Yes, sir.
And my last good cur dog, probably around 2000, just couldn't reproduce himself. And to be fair to him, we never bred him to anything as good as him. And my main criteria for culling Plotts, if they didn't have the nose those cur dogs had, they just had to go.
Yes, sir.
But right around 2000, when the last good cur dog I had was gone, it was just so much easier for me finding a good hog dog in a Plott. And so, I've had them since the early 80s. That's what I use now. You might call me a recreational bear hunter because I just can't, I don't live in bear country. I've got to travel for bear country, and
yes, sir.
Florida doesn't have a dog season now. They're supposed to get one in 2027.
I seen that.
But I've hunted, was in Elise, Georgia. We went to Canada every year bear hunting. And now I'd like to go to Wisconsin for about 3 weeks out of their training season, just because by the time August rolls around, I am ready to get out of this heat, and it's so much cooler up there.
Yes, sir. I know what you're saying about the heat, Mr. Mike. We ran a couple good ones last night, I believe. Yeah, last night my buddy and I, he's got your Plott hounds. You know who I'm talking about. I try to refer from a lot of name dropping, but we ran a couple good ones, and it was warm out yesterday, so I know what you're talking about on this heat.
Right.
Actually, not a couple good ones. I'm sorry, I don't want to lie to everybody. We caught a little shoat and then a pretty good sow. But with you was talking about your Plotts, and you started mentioning a little bit about Canada and Florida, Georgia. Just please inform all the listeners. You've had the luxury of being able to the blessing. I mean that's a gift from above to be able to travel countries with your dogs doing this. Can you please explain to them, off the top of your head, just kind of all the areas you've really been to, states, countries that you have hunted, and different terrain features of those, and kind of which ones were a little bit on the rougher side and which ones were kind of, I mean, you don't have to get too deep into it, but you kind of get what I'm asking? Yeah,
that's not a problem. I've bear hunted in way more places than I've hog hunted, just because, I'll travel to bear hunt. I won't hardly travel to hog hunt, but, I've hog hunted most of the southern states, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. And I will say the toughest place I've hog hunted would be Florida. It is thick and it is wet, and that's the same bear hunt too. Florida, we used to have to cut our way into the tree. And the only good thing about that is you had a good trail coming out. But to give you an idea how thick it was, we were cutting our way into a tree. We'd probably cut about half an hour. This is in the summertime. We stopped to take a break, and we could still hear people talking on the road. That's pretty thick.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah.
And I will say the coast of North Carolina is a close second for being tough. Now, that being said, every state's got its obstacles, and now that I've got age on me, the mountains are by far the hardest for me to navigate. And another thing about the mountains, though, anybody that hunts their dogs in the mountain, those dogs are by far so much better condition than our dogs in the flatlands. And, I've taken dogs up there, up to Tennessee. I was hunting with Tracy Jones. They had a litter mate to my hillbilly dog.
Is that sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but would that be the Houston Valley Plotts?
That would be Houston Valley, Ben Jones.
Yes, sir.
And Tracy Jones.
Yes, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify for the listeners that they're, who you're talking about.
Right.
In reference.
And anyway, they were being litter mates. I think the second day we got on a bear, and for like 3 hours, Hillbilly and Ben's hook dog were running neck and neck. But after 3 hours, that hook dog started pulling away. It was just in better shape.
Yes, sir.
And so anyway, I think every state's got its challenges, and obstacles. But to be, so there are no easy places to hunt. Like where I live now,
down in that marsh.
Well, the marsh, as far as getting on hogs, is probably the easiest place we've got.
Yeah,
But sometimes it can be pretty tough getting to them.
Yeah.
And, unless you have an airboat, or like on the management areas, you're not allowed an airboat. So I've got a personal rule the last few years. If they catch a hog or bay a hog, 300 yards and more, I let the young guys go to it. Under that, I'll go ahead and walk to them, and that's, I guess, age does have its privileges.
Yes, sir. No, I've trust me, I've listened to you enough, and I believe you did like a wounded warrior hunt, and you said the Houndsman XP gentleman was hunting with you, and they said by the last hog, he was like, I'll let the draggers get it, or something like along those lines. The veterans y'all had down, which is an awesome thing y'all do. And that's just you strictly volunteering your own time, correct? You're not paid for any of that, right?
Right. Yeah. We do it. We normally do 2 a year. My buddy Charlie has an outfit for wounded warriors, and we do that every year. And then Chris Powell of Houndsman XP, we normally do one for him. He calls it something like Freedom Fighters or something.
Yes, sir. Yep, that's correct.
And we put on a hunt with him. Now, Chris couldn't make it last year, so we didn't do his. But it's just a way to give back to those soldiers that have given their all.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And that's very much appreciated. A lot of even outfitters won't do stuff like that. So for somebody who's not even really running an outfit and taking time out of their day and putting their dogs, just at risk alone, not knowing who they're really hunting around is another thing. That's just awesome for y'all to do. Now, I gotta go back a little bit. We was talking about your dogs and the locations. You've had. I'm guilty. I promise, Mr. Mike, I have bought a lot of. I would message everywhere on social media trying to find your dogs. Because to let the viewers know, Mr. Mike can only have so many litters a year if the opportunity's presented. But I was trying to get something that was older that I didn't really want a puppy from, or that I didn't want a puppy right away. I wanted to be able to start some stuff and get it going. I didn't want to wait 6 to 8 months or whatever to get stuff going. So Mr. Mike has had dogs all over the country easily, and I bought some from Mississippi, Florida, Louisiana, just a bunch of different states. But that's just a little bit of it. Mr. Mike, do you mind telling them, all the places you've exported dogs overseas, bear hunting dogs, stuff like that? Do you mind covering that real quick?
Yeah, that's not a problem. Let me think about this a second. Well, Sweden comes to mind, and I guess the Scandinavian countries, because we've got Sweden, Norway, Finland. Then on the other side of Europe, sent dogs to Spain, for boar dogs.
Yes, sir.
Got them in Mexico, and over there they use them for javelinas.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I've seen some videos on that.
Yeah, and then Croatia.
Oh, wow. I see. That's the only one like all the research I've done on you, that's the only one I did not know about was Croatia.
And that's been pretty recent,
okay.
About 6 months or so ago.
Yeah, because one of my dogs that I got that comes from your yard, one of the pups that I bought from somebody, his daddy, if I'm correct, Tracker and Wonder. So Tracker is now over in Sweden as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And to give you a little information on him, they just had their bear season over there.
Okay.
And he had 3 kills to him. Now, and he was on one bear for 22 miles before they finally got another dog turned into him, and they did kill the bear.
Oh my goodness!
But he was running that bear solo, baited, a couple of times. The bear would keep breaking, and but they finally got the bear killed. I think it was a 350-pound sow.
Gosh, that's a good one, though. What was the... I listened to a podcast. I don't want to get lying, but was it y'all that had like a record one or something that was like 500 and some pounds, or am I hearing that from something else?
My last trip over there, and I've been over there 3 times. It's a beautiful country. It's real pristine. It's on the same latitude as Alaska, upper Sweden. So got a lot of the same type of trees, mountains, so just very clean, we're over here, we've got people that throw out garbage like crazy. It drives me crazy. But anyway, they've got the European brown bear,
yes,
which
sir.
is just a subspecies of our grizzly. But my last trip over there, at the time, they'd broken that record since then. We killed the 4th largest bear over in Sweden, and that bear weighed 699 pounds.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, so I was off on the number. I'm sorry. I didn't want to start lying. I know I heard a number, and I couldn't remember exactly what you said. I'm a huge fan. I've listened to your podcast on every platform probably 4 or 5 times. Now, with that being said, Mr. Mike, how do you when you go, when like advice coming to a newcomer, let's try to cover that. You don't just get a dog that caliber, just because they buy it from BayouCajun. And they got the capabilities of being that. But, people get this wrong mindset where they think that, hey, I bought this name dog. It comes with these papers. I don't have to do anything with it. It's gonna just jump straight out the gate and catch me, a 280-pound boar hog, dropping it in the middle of town, stuff like that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is a lot of people's mindset. They'll get a puppy, keep it in the kennel for a year, take it out to hunt, and expect it to do something.
Yes, sir.
I'll be the first to say my dogs aren't like that. They need to be worked early and owned, So, and this, the more you put into a dog, the better results you're going to have.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, you are 100% correct. I have I've had 6 BayouCajuns, and I'm down to 2 right now. That's no fault on them dogs, Mr. Mike. You have a lot of grit in your dogs. They're phenomenal. I mean, they're just astronomical. It's just at a younger age, I'm trying to, maybe you can help me with this. I'm trying to get them to back off, and they get a little bit too rough.
Yeah, and some of my, and I've gone back and forth over the grit thing.
Yes,
I like to bear hunt. Well, you need a grittier dog for bear hunting than you do for dog hunting. And this, a gritty dog just isn't going to last hog hunting.
Yes, sir. You're 100% correct.
Or I should say a catchy dog. But there's something about a bear that will just scare the tar out of a dog. So it takes a dog that's mentally tough and gritty to stay in those thickets with a bear. And, now that I'm retired, so I've got more time, I want to do more bear hunting. And here's the deal, too. I backed off the grit several times, basically because I was just hog hunting.
Yes, sir.
And, I would rather my catch dogs do the catching.
Yeah.
There's less vet bills and all that. So, but I've never really been 100% happy with that. I will confess, I like a gritty dog. And, but, I've had some dogs that were, when I say catchy, I'm talking about bulldog catchy.
Oh,
the only luck I've had with them is hunting them by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this too: the grittiest dog on my place is a female, and she finally learned after about 2 years she would back up and bait. But if she's got help, she's going to catch it.
And which one is that, Mr. Mike?
That's my trumpet female.
Oh, trumpet. I don't have any. None of mine had trumpet in there. They're like, wasn't from trumpet. Auburn, Showtime in Auburn.
Yeah.
Tracker and Wonder.
Well, they're all related, top and bottom.
Well, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just saying, as in like directly from that couple. I guess I'm sorry, saying she was directly on the bottom.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I know I got a few of them, but You know, we got on the little gritty, and we're kind of talking about the plots speed wise. I mean, have you ever? And I personally have, and I don't want to start throwing numbers out there from my end, but have you ever really kind of kept track of? You know, we talked about the grit. They got the grit. That's not a problem. But the speed wise in your BayouCajun Plott hounds, do you have a rough number you could really say when they're on a, you know, we're dropping them on a cold track, it's how many ever hours old, then when they start getting warmer, what's the speed change, and then when they're looking at it, they're trying to get it stopped. Do you really have you ever really tried to pay attention, honestly, to the different speeds that they're getting?
Just a little bit. And on this one hog, we put out on a good track, and my dog Yell. Well, I put a real young dog and Yell out.
Okay.
They took it about 400 yards and got bogged down. And I know they were in a bunch of roots and all, but you know, I'm kind of impatient. I was giving them about 3 or 4 minutes, and they were going in circles. So I cut my Hank dog in there. He went in there. I mean, he didn't even bobble, you know. I mean, but he's the kind of dog that makes things look easy, you know. And he went right on through. Well, at about 900 yards, he was crossing the road, so we got around to check the track, and he had the track. Well, he was already 500 yards ahead of the other two. They'd figured it out and were coming on behind him. But Hank went another quarter mile, jumped the hog, and I reset him, you know, right there. One of the few times I've done that. Well, we caught the two back dogs, and he was running to the highway. And he gets to the highway, he's 200 yards off, and he's paralleling the highway for a few miles. And we're on the highway just in case the hog crossed so we could catch the dog.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And but anyway, he went about 3 miles and cut back in the club. We had to go way back around to get in there and get caught up. Well, I just happened to look, and I was telling my buddy, I said, he's getting ready to cross. And I had no sooner said it, he crossed. And boy, we zipped down there, put some fresh dogs on him, and they made that hog in another mile and a half. And anyway, we caught the hog, good boar, about 275 pounds. And if memory serves me right, Hank was averaging almost 8 miles an hour that whole time.
Okay.
Now, that being said, you know, the fastest thing I think in the woods are cur dogs. You know, good cur dogs.
Nose up in the air hunting type stuff?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Because we've had some cur dogs that have hunted with us and all, and they weren't any faster than the Plotts. But we've had others, these dogs are fast. And the next fastest thing I think in the woods are these running dog, cur dog crosses. But the problem with them, most of them are just turn-in dogs, and that's my opinion. I know there's others out there that have nose and all, but the ones I've hunted with were basically just turn-in dogs. But that's also just about the only way you're going to catch these running hogs too, you know, to relay them. But, you know, another story, and this was probably 8 years or so ago, we got on the hog behind the house Saturday. We ran him all day till 3 o'clock. The dogs just gave out. This was in June, I think, or early July. Well, the next day, me and another friend of mine went to a different feeder. We saw a good hog had been there, turned out. They trailed out and jumped him. You know, when he made the first crossing, I didn't think anything of it. But when he made that second crossing, I told my buddy Mike, I said, this is the hog we ran yesterday. I said, come on, I know where he's going. Man, we got around there just in time to see him cross. We threw some fresh dogs in there. And, you know, we caught the two back dogs coming. We got around, we were waiting for him at every crossing. And, you know, you don't think hogs are smart. You know, that hog got away the day before by running that route. And he stayed on that route. We turned in, I think, 3 different times. The dogs broke him down at 2:30 and bait him. And we went in and caught him. He died not even 5 minutes after we had him tied up. Just the exertion.
Yeah, stress.
stress and all that.
Yes, sir.
But he was a real lanky, maybe 200-pound Russian colored hog.
Okay.
And, but I took the average speed, which averaged between 5.5 miles an hour to 7.5 miles an hour. And we ran that hog 8 hours. And I took the slowest speed, 5.5 miles an hour times 8. That's 44 miles that hog ran. So, people don't think a hog can run. I just wonder at the hog we've run all day and never caught them,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And that, again, that's all in cutover.
So you said, maybe I missed it, but you did say, okay, you did the math. It ended up being 44 miles. Now, did you come up with a speed on that by chance, maybe per average, or did I?
Right. Yeah, the dogs average anywhere between 5.5 miles an hour to 7.5 miles an hour. And, that's one thing.
44 miles, though.
Yeah, I don't really understand, because I can put 4 or 5 collars on a dog and get 4 or 5 different readings on speed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. I've done it a lot. I know what you're saying. That's why I was curious, and I really wanted to ask you is, I mean, this is just me trying to do my own, just trying to keep information for myself based off of what these dogs' speeds are. But I've also messed up and sounded like an idiot because I was watching that Garmin. We were in the boat, and the average speed from the boat to the dog, I was like, man, my dogs are averaging 14 mile an hour on a 3-mile race. Yeah, no, they're not. Yeah. And those Garmins, I mean, they are what they are, and I'm very thankful for them. They do help, but it could make a liar out of you by trying to tell. And that was a rookie beginner mistake. I've like, no, my dogs are averaging that. Luckily, I didn't.
Well, and also these speeds are counting cold trail and all that, because I always forget to reset it when the dogs jump.
Yes, sir.
But that's mostly counting the cold trail, and that's not even counting that day. We lost signal on them 2 or 3 times,
Yeah. I know the feeling I know the feeling of that. Well, I mean, and Mr. Mike, while we're still talking about him, you're covering it really good. I'm liking what you're, the information you're putting out. This is very, very helpful. We're on this little statistic topic based on the Plott hounds. We've went over speed a little bit. Now baying capability, from my experience, I do not have a single problem if I were in a bad situation with my dogs holding and I'm not exaggerating this, a 3-4 hour bay. And that's because I've hunted on people's private property. We're like, hey, we need to get permission. You're not going onto their property, because to keep a Plott hound in even a 900 acre area it's not easy. We were on a lease and we had to get permission off of the lease, and the dogs ended up having to hold that bay for quite a while. And I know mine are on the smaller end. I'm still new to this, Mr. Mike. I'm not deep into it. That's why I really am thankful you're here to kind of help me share this information. So, from your experience, what has the bay times been? How long have you experienced in Plott hounds being able to hold a bay?
Normally, I mean, that Showtime dog, we've left him bayed 3 hours or so, because we were running another hog and we wanted to get to that one.
Yes, sir.
And that Hank dog, same thing, they would stay bayed by themselves 3-4 hours. I mean, that's the longest it's taken. That being said, there's been several times we couldn't get to them and we had to tone them out.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And but if you really want to hear a good story, the longest dogs that I've ever left bayed.
Cur dogs. I already know.
two cur dogs I had.
For all you cur dog fans out there, by the way, I've heard this story from Mr. Mike, but I really want him to share it to y'all, because this is an incredible. It's a mind blower, especially y'all new ones that have been listening and messaging me. Listen to this. I'm not, just because I run Plotts doesn't mean I'm sitting here, listen to this cur dog story. It's astronomical.
Well, first of all, I mean, there are good dogs in every breed, and way more sorry ones than there are good ones. But I had a couple of cur dogs, and one of them I'd say was just like a solid journeyman dog. He'd go, but nothing fancy. The other dog was pretty exceptional. But anyway, we were hunting out in Honey Island Swamp, and this was before it was a management area or a federal refuge. And we caught 3 shotes and 3 big sows, and I'm saying big, 160, 175 pounds each. Well, Jimmy said, you know, we're on the island, and the dogs are relayed off, you know. So we're heading back to the boat. Jimmy was going to go get a 3-wheeler so we could get those hogs out. And we're carrying the 3 shotes with us. You know, they were only 30 pounds apiece. So we get back to the boat, and this is back when we had telemetry. And I was taking a read, and I was getting them in one spot about the middle of the island. And Jimmy came back in about an hour and a half. He had 3 wheelbarrows. And I said, Jimmy, we don't need those hogs that bad. Let's just go cut them. I told him, I said, let's go cut them loose. He says, oh, no, we only get to hunt in here, you know, every so often. So we're going to bring them out. So he had brought his brother with him. Well, we went, we loaded, and we wheelbarrowed those hogs out. We got back to the boat. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening. Well, I took another reading on the dogs, and they were in the same place. Well, I told Jimmy, I said, we're hunting here in the morning. Those dogs will be here at the boat. So we left them. We came back the next morning. Jimmy had heard about seeing a herd of hogs on the sandbar. He wanted to go check it out. I went around to where we'd parked the day before. Well, no dogs took a read. They were in the same spot. So I was thinking, man, I know there's not a camp or anything over there. So anyway, I went around, got Jimmy. We got to the closest place and started walking into them. Well, we caught 3 hogs on the way in, and I guess we were maybe halfway to them. But I could hear dogs barking. And I said, Jimmy, hush our dogs up, you know, because we had some puppies barking at the hogs we had just tied up. And I pulled out my telemetry. I said, that's them. They're bait. So we got, and they had disappeared on us about 10 o'clock the morning before when they, you know, had relayed out. So we walked in, caught a sow about the same size. They had chewed her ears off, and where her ears had been was scabbed over. But they couldn't hold her after that, so they just sat there and bait her. Well, we caught her, and you would think those dogs would have been whipped out. But we had no sooner, you know, had our hands on her, they were gone again. And they probably didn't go a quarter of a mile. We heard a rally. And I mean, those hogs were rattling so loud we could barely hear the dogs barking. So we eased in there, and there's probably 30 head of hogs. And I don't know exactly how many we caught out of that, but I'd say we caught 15 hogs. And me and a buddy of mine, Todd Dempster, we were turning them loose as fast as we were catching them. And Jimmy screaming at us, don't turn them loose. And I said, Jimmy, we already got more hogs than we can ever get out of here. And Jimmy's got what I call that Pearl River mentality. Those people act like they're starving to death. And, you know, they want to take every hog out. But anyway, we ended up getting out there. It was a long day hauling hogs out. And fortunately, there was about 8 people there that can back that story up. And I had a real good buddy of mine, Joe Hudson. He's got the Shamrock plots.
Yep.
And, you know, I told him that story when it happened. And I could tell he didn't believe me that those dogs had stayed bait 25 hours. He just said, oh, that's a good story, you know. Well, he came down to hunt with me a couple of years ago. And 2 of the guys that were there that day, you know, verified that story.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was pretty impressive dog work all the way around. You know, whether it's cur dogs or plots, they were cur dogs.
Yes, sir. So there's another one on those stories you told as well. There's one. That's the same gentleman that also said that he thinks the hog and the dogs laid down and take a nap or something.
Well, that's what. That wasn't Jimmy. That was his brother. I'm trying to think of his name, but that was just BS. He was shooting Chris. I can promise you those. While they might have taken a break, went and got water, whatever. You know, the bottom line is they stayed hooked and they were baying when we caught the hog. Yes,
sir. Yeah, that's awesome. But there was another story you also told that I would like for them to hear as well. You had to call the cops. They was bait up in a van or an abandoned van, and
yeah,
your buddy went 45 miles one way just to get a catch dog.
Well, what happened? We were hunting in New Orleans East. We called it the Green Bridge. It's the bridge that goes over the Intercoastal Canal into Chalmette. Dogs, and back then I had a dog called Trapper, and he would be in the top 3 plots I've ever had. Dog just had incredible endurance. Well, let me interrupt myself. And where are you finding these stories at?
Mr. Mike, I have done so much research. I'm telling you, you'd probably, I hate to say it publicly and let people hear it, but you might be weirded out on how much research I've done on you. When I'm telling you, Mr. Mike, that I did all this before and I want these listeners to kind of know this. Please don't lose track of where we're at on this. But when I got into it, I didn't have the luxury of finding anybody to necessarily go to hunt with. That's what I've explained to my listeners in the past. I tried. I was promised to go on hunts with multiple people. I would show up to boat launches. I would meet them wherever. I was always on time. I offered to pay for gas. I offered to use my boat, the whole 9 yards, and I was never taken for like the first few months. And Mr. Mike, I'm not sure if you know, but I spent, how much ever it costs in collars and handhelds and whatnot to get started. So that's why I'm just informing you. I kind of started all this to try to help a lot of newcomers coming into this. And I'm still a newcomer. I don't have that much knowledge, but you're the man I did the research on. And I dug into it. I was like, I want these dogs, but I want them from this guy. Long story short, real quick to kind of update you, all the listeners really know, but I'm not name dropping. I've already that's not what I want to do, but you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. I ended up meeting them out on the river real quick, and we just happened to run into each other. And they had a puppy, not a puppy, it was over a year old, and it was out of your Showtime Auburn dog. And you know who my friends are, and you know they run your dogs as well.
Right.
And they had a Showtime Auburn dog, and Yellow and Amber, I believe, is their other one.
Yeah.
So they had them two, and I pulled up, and this guy was very humble, just phenomenal. I said, man, I got a Plott too. Mr. Mike, this was not no Plott hound. I bought it off Facebook. Somebody told me it was a Plott, and I believed it. It was probably a Plott. It might have had like an eighth of Plott in it, but it had some Walker, maybe some Cur Dog cross, just all over the place. But I was taking people's words for it in the beginning. And I made the mistake of just trusting people. Well, I pulled up with this guy and these dogs, and these aren't my dogs I'm bragging about. This is my buddy's dogs, and I'm not exaggerating this by any means. We would pull up, and there no sign, period, just front of the boat. We're not rigging, nothing. He's just free casting wherever. I am not lying. By the time we pulled up behind them, his Garmin was showing them dogs 400 to 500 yards out just hunting. I mean, and it was those two Plotts. And I kept talking to us, and I looked at my wife, Mr. Mike, I'm going to be honest, and I said, man, them ain't Plott hounds. Them things are a little tall, and, and I'm just talking to my wife. I'm being very honest about this. I want to be open about it so people don't make the same mistakes I did. Well, he talked to me, and he did. He pushed me, and he said, hey, you're doing all this research on these Plott hounds, and you're looking in the wrong direction. He didn't tell me you're looking in the wrong direction. He said, just look up Mike Cauley and read on him. And I did. And oh my goodness, Mr. Mike, I'm telling you, I've done so much research on you. It's crazy. I've also, the dogs, your lines, and I was fascinated by it. And then I started reaching out to people trying to get dogs. But what I seen from them two alone and was just astronomical the way they would hunt. And I wasn't there a lot, so I don't want to exaggerate that saying because him and I just met, and then that Showtime Auburn dog ended up getting cut down, a little tiny cut, and he ended up dying. I wasn't there for that, but I mean that's what he told me. But he ended up telling me on his yard when we're sitting around talking and hunting together, whatever. He says out of everything he's ever had, that is the best dog he's ever fed, and that dog didn't make 2 years old.
Right.
And he's got a huge reputation for running a lot of dogs and a lot of reputable dogs. And he said that was the best. So it pointed me in the direction towards you, and then that's where I started doing kind of all my research, and I did a lot of it to make sure I went the right direction, and clearly it did. It put me in the right direction, and that's where I'm at now. It moved things a lot quicker, is what I really want to say.
Right, and while we're kind of on that subject, another one that dog's litter mates was killed by a bear. But there's 2 or 3 others, and I've got 2 of them at home. It's just one of those crosses. The dogs had everything. They had the hunt, nose, and speed. In fact, I want to make that cross again. But anyway, getting back that trapper story with the hog swam. We basically we free casted the dogs. They went out, jumped, probably 300 or 400 yards. And when I say the race was on, we ran that hog for 3 hours, turned a few more loose. And, there's a lot of dogs that can run hard for 3 or 4 hours, but then they start slacking off. And that's where that trapper dog shined, because he just had that all-day endurance to keep pushing. And anyway, he was a good quarter mile or better ahead of the other dogs, and the hog hit the ship channel. Well, by the time we got there, Trapper had the hog bait on the shoreline on the other side. Well, we called the dogs coming, and, we had to go pick up our bites, go around. Well, by then it was 12 o'clock. The guy that had the catch dog, he had already left. So we get around. My friend Pat called one of his buddies that's a New Orleans policeman. He showed up with like 3 motorcycle cops, and it must have been a slow crime day in New Orleans, because they went with us. Trapper had moved, had that hog bait up in a junkyard, had him inside an old beat-up van, where the doors open on the side, and Trapper sitting there on the outside, the hog's inside the van. Well, Pat said, look, I'm going to run home and get my catch dog. He lived 45 minutes away in Slidell. So we sat there for an hour and a half and watched Trapper just clock him off. And the New Orleans police, they wanted to shoot the hog. And I was telling them, no, Pat will be back here. Well, hour and a half, Pat was back. He sent the bulldog in. We caught the hog, got him out. And that was pretty much the end of that story. But, it was already like 85, 87 degrees that day. And, he stayed bayed inside that van from about noon to 1:30, in that heat, just clocking them off.
Do you by chance remember off the top of your head? I'm really just, I'm loving it. What year this was?
Not offhand. It would have to be around 2000 or so.
Okay.
Because I ended up selling Trapper to a friend of mine in Wisconsin. He was with us when we were bear hunting in Ontario, and he watched Trapper take a track the other dogs didn't want to fool with, trail him across the island, hit the water. He was trailing him across the water to another island. And, that's a whole other topic. But as long as it's not running water holds scent.
Oh.
Because I watched 2 or 3 of my dogs trailing and opening because they could smell that scent on the water.
That's exactly what I was about to hit on next, Mr. Mike. I literally was going to ask you, because you do have a story, another one, I'm sorry, and I was going to hit their water abilities. Because clearly from my experience, especially with the stuff I hunt, and it's a lot of water. It's a lot.
Okay, well, anyway, Mark told me if I ever wanted to sell him, let him know first. And I ended up getting hurt, and I couldn't work for a month. Yeah. So, I called Mark up, sold him Trapper and 2 other dogs. And he was smart enough to have Trapper collected. And we made a cross last year with one. I got a jip that really impressed my buddy Andy, that smart son. Train a bear by herself and just running up front. So he wanted to use the Trapper semen on him, and we did that, and we got 7 pups.
That was here recently, because you were telling me you were doing an AI with Trapper, right?
Right, uh-huh.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I remember you talking about that. Yeah. So, I mean, are you still have them on your yard, or how did that go exactly?
Okay, I've got 2 pups. They're 8 months old.
Okay.
My buddy, he kept a female, and I placed them around with friends.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So, in fact, one of them just got ate up this past weekend by a bear pretty bad. And we all try to keep the young pups like that on small bear, running bear. But this bear ate up in a culvert. And that pup got in that culvert with him, and that bear just ate her lunch.
Oh, goodness.
And,
is she going to make it, or?
Yeah, she's going to make it, but we'll have to see if she goes back on a bear or not.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
so, it goes back to some bear will put the fear of God in a dog.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that. So that's something I really wanted to actually mention as well. That's something I didn't have a problem with, though, on the hog side, Mr. Mike, and I would ask you as well, when you've had a dog cut down real bad, like my Boo dog, for example, or Tracer, they didn't have a problem getting cut down, getting them healed and getting them back out in the woods. I don't rush the process by any means. I mean, I make sure they're good. And I've never had that problem to where getting them back out there was an issue.
Right.
I don't know what's your input on that one? You're the expert on it, so I would like to know if you've ever ran into those issues to where maybe they lost interest, and then, were they a cull in your opinion at that point? Or?
If they won't go back and bay a hog, to me they're a cull.
Yes,
it's, I'm very fortunate where I live. I can let my puppies run loose. They run loose till they're about 4.5, 5 months, and by then they've graduated to running deer. They started off with squirrels, rabbits, then deer. Well, I pin them up then, but I'm very fortunate to have a 25-acre running pen, and I keep 1 hog in it. Those puppies have to trail them up and get them jumped. And so I'll work them a couple of months, and not a lot, maybe once a week. I'll run them in that pen. By the time they're 8 or 9 months old, they know what the ball game's all about. All I have to do is dump them in hog sign, and they can trail it up and get them jumped.
Yeah.
But that being said, when we go hunting, I'm not looking to put them on a big boar. If we get them sows and shoats, I'm turning them out. But, I don't want to get them wrecked, right off the bat. So that's pretty much my process. And I really think, dogs I've kept at 1 year are like most people's 2-year-old dogs. They've just, all their life, they've been using their nose.
Yeah.
And it just pays huge dividends.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you covered that a little bit, kind of your starting. I learned that from you, Mr. Mike. I want you to know that when we talked, you did tell me, you're like, hey, try to start them out on some shoats or some piglets or, little sows, anything, you can find in the woods wise. Don't be trying to turn them out on big boar hogs. And
right.
I was on the wrong track for everybody listening. I was like, no, I want my dogs, based off of what my friend's saying and stuff, I want them to strictly only catch big boar hogs, nothing else. Well, that clearly you can see what happened when I was trying to do that. Now, I wanted to give you credit, because I got to give credit where credit is due, Mr. Mike. And yeah, I learned that strictly from you, or specifically from you, that drop them on smaller, and it builds their confidence a lot. And a lot quicker, I've noticed. I'm not, and once again, I want you to know, I'm still newer and fresher to this, but we've had the luxury of being able to hunt very, very, very often. So when I'm saying quicker, I'm talking a few months. I'm not saying they're finished quality dogs, but I'm seeing progression within a few months here and there.
Right.
And I have nothing, negative to say on that end by any means, about that part. Now, we was talking a little bit earlier, about the swimming, their aquatics, however you want to word it professionally. The dog's swimming ability. It's that simple. It's just it's crazy. It's awesome. I've witnessed it firsthand. Another one of mine, real quick. I've watched my male dog bay a hog in the river, in the Sabine River, like in the river. Not it swam out there and it crossed it and baited on the ledge. Like it actually was able to start barking at it in the water and was trying to nip on it. Hogs are quick swimmers. I'm not saying that would happen every single time because it's only happened once, and we've swam a lot of hogs. But Mr. Mike, I know you have a great story for this one. The hog that swam across, I believe, and you had like 5-year-old pup or 5 1-year-old pups or something that got hit by a barge, and they all lived.
Right. Yeah. That was the same place that Trapper dog ran one or chased one across the ship channel. But we were out there, and we got on a hog, and I just brought puppies. 5 1-year-old puppies. They were in there, and same thing. Hog hit the ship channel, but these puppies were right on him. They were about almost to the middle, and I told Todd, I said, "Dang, look at that barge coming." I mean, a big barge coming right down the middle of the ship channel, and I told Todd, he's going to hit them. He's going to hit them. They can't get out of the way. Sure enough, he ran over the hog, dogs, everything. And I told my buddy Todd, I said, there goes all my last year puppies, are gone. And then we started seeing dogs pop up on the side, and all 5 of those pups made it. I couldn't believe it, but they were done with the hog. I can tell you that. They were swimming for sure. And anyway, after he had passed, the hog grounded. We could see him floating out there. We got a fisherman to go out there and get him for us, and brought him in. And it's about the same hog, 160, 170 pound boar hog. And but I knew I had lost all 5 of those young dogs. And that's just about the sickest feeling you can have. After you put all the time and effort into raising them.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And for the listener, we have a bunch of people that from my area where I'm originally from, Kansas area. Can you give them kind of a reference on how big a ship channel is? Not just coming from me, but from you as well, for this reference.
I think the one around us is probably a 1/4 mile, maybe a little wider.
So yeah, for everybody listening, I mean he's talking pretty big, and a long ways for a dog to swim. So that's some incredible. That's one of the most. I think that's probably, besides the van story, I think that's my favorite story. Actually, that is my favorite story that I have heard. From Mr. Mike telling, through other platforms, and guys, look at them other platforms and listen to them, and if you're interested in these Plott hounds, reach out to me, and I can tell you these platforms that you can listen to Mr. Mike on, and then figure out how to get in touch with him. Maybe he can help y'all. But Mr. Mike, is there another story? I'm not ending right now. I just want to know, is there another cool story to add on top that these Plott hounds done that was just remarkable, that you have not, that probably I haven't heard yet? I mean, I've listened to pretty much everything I think I can on any platform that you're on. Is there any story that you could just, a memorable story, something that, it might not be the coolest story ever, but it's your favorite hunt, like it just meant a lot to you? Anything like that?
Well, nothing really comes to mind, over the years they get all jumbled together, and I put a lot of years in. So, in about a month I'm going to be 70. So it kind of all runs together. About my favorite story is the one when Trapper, pushed that hog across the ship channel and stayed bait till we got a catch dog to him. But it's, we've had a lot of good all-day races. I've got a story that kind of stands out. Me and this good buddy of mine, Richard, and this was in 1988. It was Christmas Eve day. We went out, and Richard had a real nice plot, and its breeding was out of Idaho. But
okay.
he, and I had 2 Plott pups about a year old. Well, anyway, his dog, and the dog's name was Mike, went out, got a hog going, and I turned those 2 puppies in. Well, we ran that hog. At midday, we caught the dogs crossing the road. And I told Richard, I said, it's Christmas Eve. Do we want to turn them loose or just call it a day? And Richard says, cut them loose. So we cut them. And we made that hog at 2:30, in the afternoon. And it was another deal where, we caught him, hog died 5 minutes after he was tied up. And, but I ended up mounting that hog, a real pretty Russian hog, about 2.5-inch gutters. So, a lot of people can catch the easy hogs. I like to catch those tough running hogs. I like to run the air out of them. That's my favorite out of all of it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. The race and I prefer me a little open. I'm not going to lie. I know a lot of people say, open dogs are pushing the hogs the whole time. And I don't know. I can see where they're coming from, but I've never really, honestly, I believe I ran into that issue. I started running GoPros on my dogs to kind of see what they're doing in the woods to make sure they're actually on hogs. Because, I'm still new and getting these dogs going.
Well, I'll give you my idea on why the hogs run so much. And it's not, to me, whether they're open or not. It's the amount of dogs on the ground that are making these hogs break and run. Because, there's been so many times I've turned like a single Plott out, he'll go get bait. And it's just like that Showtime dog. We're hunting behind the house, turn him out. Man, it wasn't no time. He was bait.
Yes,
and it was barely daylight. And I asked Larry, I said, do we really want to go catch this hog, or are you going to feed a few more dogs in and have a Well, we just turned more dogs in and had a real good race and never caught him again.
That's awesome. See, that's the stuff I like, and that's the stuff my buddy and I, we like the races. And granted, we do like sometimes, like yesterday, the real quick ending. But sometimes it's like it puts an end to our whole hunt when we're like, all right, we caught a hog. And then it's like, dang it, all right, let's go home. There's nothing better than a good race going in. And I would prefer, I'm going to say this, and I know a lot of people might not like it, Mr. Mike, but I do. I prefer a 4 to 5 hour race, even if it's a 80-pound pig. I don't care. As long as it was running and moving and kept them dogs going and finish it out, then them rigging and catching a hog or a show, piglet, hog, pig, whatever, however you want to word it, 75, 80 yards off the bank. I'm not big into having to catch a hog. I'm big into seeing them dogs work, and I love it. I do. People will get a little upset. I don't know from your end, but when you're starting out younger dogs that help me out a little bit, maybe I'm doing it wrong. But when they get to running deer, so I get a little upset if I see them running deer at my younger dogs, but I don't get onto them. I don't discipline them. I don't tone them. I don't shock them. At young ages, I'm talking my 8-month-old ones that I'm running out now. I'm not sitting there doing any type of stuff like that. So is that a wrong approach, or should I start trash breaking them immediately of that? I'm more or less looking at they're hunting. I don't want to take that nose away from them.
Well, once they know running hogs is okay, I would never let them run a deer. I would.
Yes, sir.
I would be shocking them the minute you knew they were on a deer. And I'll go ahead and tell you how I break my dogs. It's been by far the easiest. And it's during deer season. I'll shoot a deer, bring it up to the kennels, put a short leash around that deer's neck, hook pups from 6 months old and up to it. And I'll just bump them a couple of times. Well, I do that, man, that deer's head's flopping. Every time that dog jerks back, that deer's head's flopping at him, and it scares the tar out of him. And if you do that a couple of times, that dog will never, ever want to run a deer or have anything to do with a deer.
I like that.
And here's the thing, too. A lot of people, they see deer, they'll throw their dogs out on them. As soon as the dogs are running, they shock them.
Yes, sir.
Well, I've seen dogs that wouldn't leave your feet after a couple of times of that, So doing it the way I've done it, and I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's worked by far the best for me. It's under a controlled situation. And so it's, now if they're out in the woods and I know they're running a deer, I go ahead and burn them. But I quit turning dogs out on deer I see just because, it does. It'll take the range out of them. And another thing, too, a lot of times the more handle you put on a dog early, I think that'll take a lot of range out.
Yeah.
But,
if you're setting them up, most definitely not for success. I've noticed, if you're trying to get those free cast dogs, that wraps up today's journey on Tusks and Tales. From the woods to the kennels and every trail in between, these stories bind us together. Thanks for listening, and until next time, may your dogs run true and your fire never fade.